Every February in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, Jimmy Neutron emerges from his burrow, freshly awakened from hibernation, to predict the arrival of his reboot. If he sees a greedy Nickelodeon executive, well, it's back to the Shadow Realm for another year for old Jimbo. However, if the Nickelodeon executives play their cards right and Jimmy doesn't catch a whiff of their greedy corporate stench, then huge news! That means that the reboot of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius is officially upon us. Last February in 2025, there were rumblings and reports that Jimmy might not have caught the oh-so-familiar scent of cheap cologne and commercialized shame. Nevertheless, here we are a whole year later with no sign of a reboot in sight, leading some to believe that these could have just been speculative rumors. However, with gossip surfacing yet again regarding the status of Jimmy Neutron's yearly emergence, several are left with hopes that the Nickelodeon executives can just keep their worthless input to themselves and let the creative minds behind the show coax Jimmy out of retirement and into a brand new show that doesn't suck. Along the way though, fans of the classic movie and the show that followed it are left wondering, what would a return to the world of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius look like? We'll be tackling that question and many more today on the debut edition of Sunday News with Giraffe Sean. Before we get into it though, thank you so much for clicking on this video and for being a part of my YouTube journey. You're the absolute best, and I hope you're having a fantastic day, whether you're watching this actually on Sunday or not. If you end up enjoying this video, do me a solid and drop a like and leave me a comment letting me know what you think about it down in the comments below. Giving feedback in the comments definitely helps this video reach more people, and if you want to go the extra mile, you can hype this video up while you're down there as well. I'm pretty sure that helps a lot nowadays, at least, maybe. Either way, thank you so much for your time, and let's get right into it. It all started 7 days ago. Last Sunday, I woke up at the crack of dawn, and as I went about my morning, I opened my phone and found myself scrolling on Facebook like the 31-year-old grandpa that I am. Among the many garbage, stupid, nonsense posts that Facebook's offensively broken algorithm was feeding me was this post from a page called Screen Rank, sharing the breaking news that a Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius sequel is reportedly in the works. Now, to be completely honest, I was low-key kinda taken back. This was the first I had heard of a Jimmy Neutron return, and to be completely transparent, I'm not sure how I feel about the idea. By all means, I loved Jimmy Neutron back in the day. However, I also loved Rugrats back in the day. And after seeing that reboot, I'm not sure I want Nickelodeon to ever bring any of their old shows back. Ever. Okay, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I do want them to bring back their old shows, but maybe in the vein of Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling or Invader Zim Enter the Floorbus. I've heard Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie was really good too, but ironically, I haven't watched it yet. When it comes to Jimmy Neutron making a comeback though, I naturally found myself curious, and I spent some time reading some comments and responses in that post, and a lot of it was people asking the same questions that we're all thinking. Are the characters all going to be older now? Are they changing the animation drastically? And probably the most asked question of all, what about Sheen? Since his voice actor, Jeffrey Garcia, sadly passed away just 2 months ago in December of 2025. I mean, I know they sent his character to space in Planet Sheen, but what would this show look like with just Jimmy and Carl and no Sheen? Would they just recast him? Needless to say, after staying in those comments for a few, Facebook is gonna Facebook, and now it just starts throwing every post about a Jimmy Neutron reboot that it can find into my feed. Even the worthless AI slop. Okay, maybe it's not all worthless. It is, I'm joking. At that, I found myself curious, and I did some digging to get to the bottom of the actual rumors reported and not just Facebook ramblings. It turns out that the posts that have been popping up within the last few days are purely just echoes of news articles that were floating around right about this same time last year, and some of these rumors have been going around since as far back as 2020, a whopping 6 years ago. With that in mind, maybe if we're lucky, this project has been in production for a while now and will be coming to us sooner rather than later. Now, the earliest mentions of a reboot that I found online that could have been considered even remotely credible would come in the form of an interview that legendary voice actor Rob Paulsen, who voiced Carl Weezer in the movie and show, did with the fine folks at comicbook.com back in April of 2020. In the interview, he brought up how Jimmy Neutron was one of those shows that was such a hit that, to this day, he still has people coming up to him and making references to his character. They love Carl, he said. I don't think it would be a bad thing at all to reboot Jimmy Neutron. I think that's one of those shows that a lot of people would love to see again. It was very good, really smart. That wouldn't surprise me. Now, he would go on to clarify that he hadn't gotten any confirmation of a reboot happening, and he hadn't been contacted to play Carl in any continuation of the series at this point. However, he would go on to say, that certainly is one that I think could stand a reboot, and I think would do okay. I think it's not too dated. I think that it would be fine. The characters I think would work fine in an updated version. Now, of course, the voice actors don't necessarily have a say in whether or not the corporate stooges at Nickelodeon will see this as a worthwhile venture to pursue financially. However, this would be an indication of positivity toward the prospect of Jimmy Neutron making a return. Around this same time, there was an interview conducted by CareReviews.net with Keith Alcorn, co-creator of Johnny Quasar, who would later become Jimmy Neutron, where he was asked if he'd want to be involved in a reboot of Jimmy Neutron on the heels of all the recent Netflix reboots of old Nicktoons. His answer was a resounding yes, and furthermore, he revealed that they actually had pitched some ideas to the execs at Nick for a Jimmy Neutron reboot with hopes that they'd be receptive due to the success of the Rocco and Zim reboots. On top of that, he also noted that the voice actors of Jimmy and Cindy, Debbie Derryberry, and Carolyn Lawrence were very interested in this reboot happening as well. From there, a user on Twitter would end up tweeting at the three with hopes of confirming that there were plans in motion, and according to an article from nickalive.net, Keith Alcorn responded saying yes. However, his Twitter account has since been deactivated, which honestly could point toward the validity of that statement. Maybe he was told to delete any potential leaks and ended up just trashing his whole account. Regardless, it needs to be said that this didn't officially confirm anything. It just reinforced the indication that the Jimmy Neutron team is seemingly wanting to get back at it, just waiting for a green light from Nickelodeon. At that, it would be practically nothing but silence for a few years until February of 2022, when the murmurs of a return of Jimmy Neutron would resurface yet again. Unfortunately, though, they didn't come with tidings of hope. Instead, they came with cries for support to get this project off of the ground at all. On February 7th, 2022, Mark DiCarlo, the voice behind none other than Hugh Neutron, tweeted to his audience saying, "Serious question, guys. Do you want to see Jimmy Neutron come back? Well, it's not an impossible task because of the fact that so many of you love it so much. All it takes is enough of you individually writing letters to Nickelodeon to bring it back." In this 3-part tweet, he went on to say, "You can find the studio's address online, and with the price of a stamp, I know if enough of you guys chip in, there'll be a good chance. I promise nothing, confirm nothing, etc. But I know one thing for sure. and it's that you guys truly love this show and care about it coming back, and we hope so too. It's incredible to see this entire generation of internet creators having been inspired by our little part in animation, and it's become an important part in so many lives, and I'd love to see that generation get to sit down with their kids to enjoy what made their days so special. Now, this is great and all, but to be honest, it was a sad indicator to all of us that the efforts made in 2020 to reboot Jimmy Neutron didn't ever really go anywhere. Still, all of the voice actors were chomping at the bit to get back at it, but clearly the issue at hand was a lot bigger than just them. The day after this tweet went out, a YouTube channel called The Able Gamer put out an interview with series creator John A. Davis, and in that interview, he reveals that back in 2020, the potential for a reboot was legitimately pretty solid.
Oh yeah, well, it's kind of sad in a way, because we had an opportunity to reboot it about 2 years ago. We had a real chance. Nickelodeon was very into it, very into the idea. They said, "Hey, we want to get the band back together." And I said, "Yeah, you know what? We're all willing to do that again." Oh, great! They get all excited, and then we're thinking, "Okay, this is going to happen." Suddenly, one person says something, and then all of a sudden the whole thing just fell apart.
Now, when he says one person says something and the whole thing fell apart, I can't help but think about Keith Alcorn's tweet from 2020 that, in hindsight, was apparently leaking the project that they were about to start working on, which of course is a big no-no. We don't know if that actually was the one thing said that caused the whole project to crumble, but if it was, imagine being the superfan that just couldn't contain yourself on Twitter and just had to tweet at them multiple times hoping for an answer. By all means, it would be up to them not to disclose the project, so ultimately, if that was what caused the project to crumble, it would be Keith Alcorn's fault for not keeping it under wraps. But still, imagine being the fan that more or less caused this project that you were so excited for to fall apart. Boy, that would be depressing.
Which is really too bad, because if I've learned anything in this business, it's that Hollywood loves to remake success, and the fact that we have everything we need. The creatives are willing to get back together. All the voice actors are still with us and eager. So who knows? I was all up for it, and I think that we had some really great ideas.
From there, John goes on to explain how when him and Keith started their animation studio, DNA Productions,
Hi, I'm Paul.
They ended up selling the rights to Jimmy Neutron to Viacom, who owned Nickelodeon, so they aren't really in control of what happens with the series. They're just eager to work on it if they're ever given the chance. However, that brings us to 1 year ago, in February of 2025. There was a post made in the r/Nickelodeon subreddit where a user who has since deleted their account shared breaking news of screenwriter Adam Pava, known for writing on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and My Gym Partner's a Monkey, among many other animated productions, making a LinkedIn post about working on a sequel film to Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for Paramount and Nickelodeon movies since December of 2023. Now, if we look at the timeline here, things actually line up pretty perfectly. In 2020, the ball started rolling and was quickly stopped by, quote, one person saying one thing. Then, in 2022, it's confirmed by the creator of the show that they weren't currently working on anything Jimmy Neutron related, but they really wanted to be. With that being said, between then and December of 2023, a lot of time had passed and maybe things had changed. Maybe they ended up getting the green light to start production on the film in that time. It does need to be pointed out that neither Nickelodeon nor Paramount have made any official statements, but still, the alleged LinkedIn post could be pointing toward this production being well underway. Since then, not much has really changed. We're here in February of 2026, and still no official news of a Jimmy Neutron reboot. However, there are multiple news articles circulating online hinting at the possibility and noting that Adam Pava has actually since wiped that LinkedIn post from his account, hinting that Paramount or Nickelodeon could have maybe asked him to remove it as to not leak the project, which, if underway, is clearly still on the down low. Personally, I think it's really important for us to keep in mind how this show started to begin with. Jimmy Neutron, unlike literally every other Nicktoon before it, started out as a full-fledged feature-length film with a theatrical run. After the success of the film, Nickelodeon dedicated to strike while the iron was hot, and they greenlit an entire series. Apparently, there were plans for a second film, but with the show airing at the time, it didn't really make much sense to them, as viewers could get their daily dose of Jimmy Neutron easily on their home television. Yet, with the show no longer being played on Nickelodeon, a sequel film could be the perfect way for Jimmy Neutron to get his foot in the door at Nickelodeon again and work his way into another season of the show. But truly, I think I speak for all of us OG fans of Jimmy Neutron when I say that there is some massive concern with how a reboot would work. Of course, all of us nostalgic 90s and 2000s kids would love to see a true return to form with the same animation style and voices, but the truth is, Nickelodeon in 2026 isn't really made for us older folks. This is, after all, a children's network. Of course, they could go for the classic Nickelodeon route of making a show that's meant to appeal to both the parents and the children watching like they did back in the day. However, in this day and age, that almost seems like a nearly impossible task. I mean, unless you're Bluey. Kids and parents alike love Bluey. As far as Jimmy Neutron goes, though, personally, I'd have a hard time adjusting if they went with a completely different animation style, which they might just have to. I mean, looking back at the original Jimmy Neutron animation, there were times when it was really clunky and almost stiff feeling. More than 20 years later, there's without a doubt been massive leaps and bounds made in the world of animation, and you can't just expect a massive corporate entity to put out a cartoon using the same exact methods that they did decades ago. Honestly, I just really hope it's not too far removed from what we're used to. I mean, the way they took Rugrats from their original 2D design and brought them to life for the reboot was nearly criminal. I really hope they don't do Jimmy Neutron dirty in the same kind of way. As far as the cast goes, it's amazing to hear that all of the essential voice actors are on board. However, we absolutely have to address the elephant in the room. Again, there is massive concern about how this show could possibly go on without Sheen. Some people are ready to accept Planet Sheen as canon, leading into him being on another planet from this point on. Others are firm about how the show just simply cannot exist without Sheen. At that, Nickelodeon is left between a rock and a hard place. Do we take the easy route and just keep Sheen on another planet and randomly throw in a zany replacement character? Or do we recast Sheen with a voice actor who's qualified for the job? Some even suggested that they might splice up some old lines like Disney did for Mr. Potato Head after his voice actor passed away. For me, my biggest fear would be Nickelodeon deciding to feed all of Sheen's old lines to an AI that can just spit out some lifeless Sheen-like quotes with perfect cookie-cutter delivery. That would be the ultimate worst-case scenario, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if, in the name of appealing to a younger audience, they took the opportunity to replace Sheen with a different character that's even more bright, shiny, and wild, sticking with the continuing where Planet Sheen left off route. However, if this is a movie that's supposed to take place in the future with Jimmy and his friends grown up now, They could easily just recast Sheen with somebody who could do an older Sheen-like voice. At the thought of the series just getting a reboot and Sheen simply being recast to a different voice actor, the first person that came to mind for me was one of my favorite voice actors, Carlos Alazraqui. To name just a few, he was Winslow in Cat Dog, Rocco in Rocco's Modern Life, Mr. Crocker in The Fairly Odd Parents, and possibly my favorite role of his, Spyro in the original Spyro the Dragon. Fun fact, from Spyro 2 onward, the voice of Spyro would be taken over by none other than Tom Kenny, also known as the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. For me personally though, I think Carlos Alazraqui would make a perfect Sheen, or as a matter of fact, he would make an even better grown-up version of Sheen, considering he actually did the voice of Sheen's father in the original Jimmy Neutron. Outside of my opinion, I saw some online suggesting that Brock Baker would be the perfect guy for the role, which I could definitely see working. His impressions are pretty phenomenal, like, for example, when he was Winnie the Pooh in South Park. Regardless of what direction they take Sheen's character, it's clear that his late voice actor Jeff Garcia left such a massive impression on fans of the show that it's hard for a lot of us to imagine it coming back without him being involved. His role was so pivotal, and he played it so perfectly well that the shoes left behind are gonna be massive to fill. Even more so if they were to replace Sheen with a completely different character. A huge part of voice acting is the person behind that microphone bringing their character to life with passion, and without a doubt, Jeff Garcia brought Sheen to life in a way that as a viewer, you could absolutely feel. With that being said, this inaugural broadcast of Sunday News with Giraffe Sean is dedicated with love to his memory and legacy. Rest easy, Jeff, and thank you so much for making such a huge impact on children all over the world. But what do you guys think? Do you think that a potential Jimmy Neutron movie sequel could lead to a reboot series that doesn't suck? Let me know down in the comments below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Also, what do you guys think about a Sunday news show like this? I don't want all of my Sunday videos to be like this, and of course it would always be like a cartoon related, but I'm totally curious about how you guys feel about this format in general. Again, some feedback down in the comments would be just amazing. Of course, I have to give a quick shout out with so much love to my friends in the True 90s Kids tier on YouTube memberships and Patreon. You all are the absolute best, and I appreciate you oh so much. Also, a special shout out to my bestie in the Sean's Best Friend tier. Your support makes such a big difference in my YouTube journey, and I can't thank you enough, friend. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everybody else. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you.